has been an incredibly exciting time in the Windows PC space. So before we even get started, I want to give a huge thank you to Qualcomm for not only sponsoring this video, but also for inviting me out here to Snapdragon Summit in Maui. Last year, when I attended Summit, they had just announced Snapdragon X Elite, which was a major push to make Windows PCs more efficient, more powerful, and if I'm being honest, inject a lot of competition in the spot. Well, fast forward to today, and not only are there a ton of Snapdragon X Elite and X Plus laptops that have been in the market, I've personally been using a Snapdragon laptop for about 6 months now. But on top of that, Summit this year, it was really about a couple of things. So to recap quickly, they did announce the brand new Snapdragon 8 Elite. Now this is the mobile chip, so this is going to be the successor to the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. The big thing is they've now incorporated their Orion core in mobile. So Orion is the new architecture that's been custom designed by Qualcomm that has been shipping in X Elite for a few months, and the second generation is inside the Snapdragon 8 Elite. So I was able to get brief hands-on with the brand new ROG Phone 9, which ASUS brought out, and it really makes a ton of claims to be incredibly powerful, power efficient. It'll actually be going on sale pretty shortly, so some of the very first Snapdragon 8 Elite devices will be launched here later in October and into November, and you can certainly expect that most of the Android flagships over the next year are going to be powered by that chip. But the thing that I was a little bit more interested in is Snapdragon X Elite, because last year, so much of what I was talking about was theoretical. You know, Qualcomm made some enormously impressive claims when they first launched the chipset. But fast forward a year, and there's been a lot of competition. Apple have released not one, but 2 generations of updates with M3 and M4. AMD have launched a brand new generation. Intel have also launched 2 generations. One of the key areas that Qualcomm really was trying to talk about was the fact that their laptops don't really cut performance when they're running on battery. Now, if you've ever done any power testing on Windows, you'll know that as soon as you unplug the vast majority of Windows laptops, they go to a much lower power state. That makes sense intuitively. You know, you want to save power when you're on battery, but what that also can mean is that you're losing a significant amount of performance. Now, this is something I've seen on every Windows laptop I've pretty much ever tested, almost every single one. But what Qualcomm claimed was their laptops don't necessarily need to do that. And I will say that in my testing, I have noticed some laptops, specifically some Lenovo laptops, that do go to a lower power state when they're unplugged, regardless of whether or not they're in high performance mode. Some of the updates we've seen here at Snapdragon Summit include updates to not only audio, so not only does Windows now support an ASIO driver, which is essentially a generic driver for audio devices, so essentially, much like on Mac, you should be able to just plug and play once this driver is live most audio peripherals on your Snapdragon-powered laptop, which is terrific. No needing to look for special drivers, at least in a lot of cases. Cubase is rolling out support for Snapdragon laptops. There's also now native support for apps such as Capture One as well as Blender. And this is important because if I think about reasons why you may want to second guess going to a Snapdragon-powered laptop, app compatibility is really the main one. That's what most people are concerned about. Because you can have all the performance in the world, you can have all the cool AI features in the world, but if the apps that you rely on a daily basis don't work, it's not really that important. But I can tell you that just in the last few months since Snapdragon X Elite has launched, I've seen a lot of updates here. So for me, one of the big ones was, at launch, I couldn't use a lot of VPN services such as NordVPN. To their credit, that is now a feature that is available. So I can use NordVPN. I've actually been using it on my IdeaPad 5X while I've been traveling. It's one of those things where it needs to continue to get better, for sure, there's no doubt. And I've had a lot of very interesting conversations here at Summit with a lot of people, not only OEMs, Microsoft. There's a lot of excitement around this platform. If you think about what Snapdragon is on mobile, it's incredibly dominant, right? Like, the vast majority of Android flagships are using Snapdragon-powered chips. They're on the 9th generation of NPU. They've got these great Adreno GPUs. The CPU now with Orion is incredibly competitive. And especially when you look at the 2nd generation, which is an 8 Elite, and maybe coming to Snapdragon X at some point, there's a lot of performance, there's a lot of power, there's a lot of sort of goodness that's sort of inherent to the platform. I've been using a laptop recently that's really made me think about the future of Snapdragon on Windows. So Lenovo sent over their IdeaPad 5X, and I've been using it as a daily driver for about a week now. And it's interesting because it's a much less expensive device. We're talking $850 retail, probably less when it goes on sale, which compares very favorably to $1,000, $1,100, $1,200 Snapdragon X Elite devices that are in the market. For $850, you were getting a slightly cut down version of Snapdragon X Elite called X Plus. It's got 8 cores instead of 12, a smaller GPU, but otherwise it's quite similar. You still got very solid performance and battery life, and importantly, you still have the full-size NPU, which means you've got 45 TOPS of capabilities and full compatibility with Copilot+. Now, of course, at this price point, you're losing a couple of other things. So it's got a 1200p display. It's OLED, it's quite nice, but 60 hertz. A good keyboard, a less than spectacular trackpad. But the thing that's jumped out to me is that traditionally when you've gone for a more mid-range laptop, a lot of cutbacks, screen quality, battery life, especially performance. And what you see with these Snapdragon X Plus devices, specifically when it comes to the IdeaPad, is that it's actually really pretty solid across the board. Going between this and some of the more expensive devices that I've tried running Snapdragon X Elite, yeah, I can notice a difference in the hardware. But going between X Plus and X Elite for significantly less money, unless you're doing something like gaming, which you can do some gaming on Snapdragon, but I will say that it's still in its infancy at the moment. So it's one of those things where, what are you really losing? Obviously, X Elite is the top tier. That's really where the sort of the highest performance and the best of the best is going to live. When you think about a very similar version of Snapdragon, when it comes to the X Plus, being available at the sub $900, maybe even the sub $800 price point, that becomes very interesting. Because if you think about what the main advantages of Snapdragon are when it comes to running on a Windows laptop, battery life is a huge one. The performance is very strong. You've got a full speed NPU, which is very efficient. So as more and more NPU and AI features come on board, your laptop's ready. You're good to go. You don't need to worry about it. When you compare that with some stuff that we've seen in the past, it's really nice to see a more mid-range device performing so well. The advancements have been incredibly rapid. When I think about what I was talking about on this exact part of the beach a year ago at Snapdragon Summit about the hypothetical potential of what you could see with this kind of stuff. And I fast forward to today, and I think about the device that's in my backpack right now. It just feels like we're at a really interesting point in the PC industry right now. Because there's so much competition everywhere. Stuff is getting better, not 5% a year, not 10% a year, but 20, 40, 50%. And that only benefits you and me as the consumers of devices. Because I'm telling you, if you're using a laptop from 3-4 years ago, buying one of these new Snapdragon X Elite devices gets you legitimately all-day battery life. Not the like, all-day battery life on like airplane mode. No, like actually all-day battery life. Like I'm regularly looking at my battery percentage on most Snapdragon devices, whether it be Surface, whether it be Lenovo, Yoga, IdeaPad, whatever. You'll see 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours estimated. Like these are real actual numbers that you can spend all day not needing to take your power adapter around. There's a reason why for as many devices that roll through the studio, I keep gravitating toward these Snapdragon devices. And I say that in all sincerity. It's not because of the sponsored video. I have been routinely daily driving one of the Snapdragon devices, whether it be the Surface, whether it be the Yoga Slim 7X, which is kind of my favorite at the moment. I keep coming back to them. I keep coming back to them because the battery life is so good. The lack of fan noise, the efficiency, the performance, there's not a lot that you're missing. And the things that you are missing when it comes to like app compatibility, nothing that I use on a regular basis is unsupported now. It was not the case when it first launched. There were a few things like VPN apps that I used that were not working. But at this point, there are 0 apps that I use on a daily basis that do not run completely seamlessly on Snapdragon. Now, obviously that might be different for you if you're relying on some very specialized stuff or you do a lot of games. I will admit, I'm certainly biased. It's something that I really want to be successful. I think it is being successful. I think that the PC industry is very much benefiting from the idea that there's more competition. Thank you very much to Qualcomm for sponsoring this video and inviting me out here to the Snapdragon Summit. I'm very curious, what do you think about where Snapdragon laptops are? I'm really curious because I feel like I've been really in the weeds with this for the last year. Do you think it's worth it? Would you buy a Snapdragon-powered device? If not, why? I'm super curious. Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, my friends, this is my rubber duck shirt, looks cool, blowing in the wind.